You're a butterfly fluttering through a tropical forest. You spot a beautiful orchid, its petals soft and inviting. You land to sip nectar, but in a split second, the flower explodes into violence. Legs like razors snatch you, and the last thing you see is a pair of jaws closing in. That's not a flower, it's an orchid mantis. You just lived the first trick of nature's most elegant ambush predator. Deep in the rainforests of Southeast Asia, that peculiar bloom you'd walk right past on a hike is not a plant at all. Those soft, curved petals you'd reach out to touch, they're the mantis's legs, flattened and stretched to look just like flower tissue. That delicate pale center you'd assume holds sweet nectar, it's the mantis's head, crowned with two huge, unblinking eyes that track every movement within striking distance. This is Hymenopus coronatus, the orchid mantis. Its body is a symphony of soft, white, and blushing pink, with thin, leaf-like lobes running along its abdomen that mimic petal edges so perfectly, even trained botanists have been fooled. Mid-field survey, you could hold one in the palm of your hand next to a real orchid and struggle to tell which is which at first glance. It's not just a passing resemblance either. Every part of its body, from the tiny segments of its legs to the subtle gradient of color across its back, is tuned to look like a fully bloomed, healthy flower. But it doesn't just look like a flower. Watch carefully, and you'll see it sway gently from side to side, slow and steady, as if caught in a soft breeze that doesn't exist in the still, humid understory. It's not moving by accident. That tiny deliberate sway sells the illusion even harder, making passing bugs think they're looking at a real plant drifting in the wind, not a hunter waiting to strike. It's the tiny extra detail that turns a good disguise into a perfect one. First described by scientists in 1879, this insect has captivated naturalists for well over a century. Early explorers wrote home about the impossible flower that bit, the pink bloom that snatched bees right out of the air. For decades, people marveled at its beauty, collected its specimens, and argued about how it could possibly have evolved such a perfect disguise. Yet for all that time, a deceptively simple question remained unanswered. Why does it look like that? The answer would shock the scientific world, revealing a predator unlike any other. For years, scientists thought they had the answer locked down. They assumed the orchid mantis was just another sit-and-wait predator, hiding among real orchids, blending in so bees and butterflies never saw it coming. That made perfect sense on paper, right? Most mantises use camouflage to hide, so why would this one be any different? But a series of bold experiments flipped that entire idea on its head, and the results blew every researcher away. Here's how they tested it. They set up two separate environments, one with real blooming flowers and one with no flowers at all. Just orchid mantises perched on plain green leaves. They expected the mantises with flowers to catch way more prey. That was their whole hypothesis after all. But what they saw made them rub their eyes and run the test again, just to be sure. The mantises without any flowers caught just as much prey as the ones hidden among blooms. Wait, no, they caught more. That meant the mantises didn't need flowers to lure food in. They were the bait. All on their own, they were drawing pollinators straight to them. No real blooms required. That's not camouflage. That's a full-on con, and scientists had completely missed it for decades. Think about the insects falling for this trick. Bees, butterflies, all the pollinators that orchids rely on to survive were actively choosing the mantis over actual flowers. These are bugs that spend their whole lives seeking out nectar, that have evolved specialized eyes and instincts to spot the best blooms. They should be good at this, but the mantis was hijacking that deep, ancient instinct so completely the bugs couldn't tell the difference. So how does it pull this off? The secret lies in ultraviolet light, the part of the spectrum human eyes can't see, but insect eyes are tuned to perfectly. Orchid mantises reflect UV light in exactly the pattern that real nectar-rich flowers use to advertise themselves to pollinators. It's a glowing beacon, a super signal that practically screams, "Nectar here," directly to their UV-sensitive eyes, way louder than any real flower could. When a curious bee lands to investigate that glowing promise of sweet food, It doesn't stand a chance. The mantis strikes with reflexes faster than the blink of an eye, so fast, high-speed cameras are needed to even catch the movement. Its spiked forelegs shoot out, impaling the prey before it can register what hit it. There's no escape, no warning, just a split second between the bee thinking it found a meal and becoming the meal itself. And all this time, people thought those soft pink and white petal-like legs were just for hiding. Remember that question from the start? The one asking if this disguise was purely for hiding or if there was a more sinister purpose. We just got the answer, and it's even darker than you might have guessed. But if you think tricking pollinators is the only trick this mantis has up its sleeve, you haven't seen anything yet. The orchid mantis has a trick that turns the tables on its own predators, a trick that involves a flash of deception. You probably already know the rule of thumb in the animal kingdom. Bright, bold colors usually scream "stay away," like the neon hues of a poison dart frog or the red stripes of a coral snake. But the orchid mantis isn't toxic at all. It has no venom, no foul taste, no sharp spines to fend off a hungry bird or lizard. So how does it survive when its own bright pink and white body should make it an easy target? That's the question we left hanging at the end of the last chapter, and the answer is twofold. First, its floral disguise works on predators too. A bird scanning the undergrowth for a juicy insect snack will see just another pretty flower, especially when the mantis holds perfectly still for hours on end. It doesn't just look like a flower, it acts like one, swaying gently in even the faintest breeze to sell the illusion. Most predators will pass right by, never realizing there's a meal hiding in plain sight. But if a predator does get too close, if it starts to peck or sniff and figures out the flower is actually prey, the mantis has a backup plan. In a split second, it unfurls its wings, revealing a startling pattern of large, eye-like spots right across the surface. Those spots look like the face of a much bigger, much more dangerous animal. It's a total bluff. The mantis can't actually hurt a bird or a lizard, but the sudden shock is often enough to make the attacker jump back and flee. It's the insect equivalent of jumping out and yelling boo, but scaled up to a life or death situation. Still, the orchid mantis's life isn't all about hunting and hiding from danger. Its entire life cycle is just as bizarre as its adult disguise. When they first hatch, the young nymphs look nothing like the delicate flower-shaped adults. They're tiny, jet black, and scuttle around exactly like ants. This ant mimicry protects them during their most vulnerable stage. When they're so small, almost anything could eat them. Most predators avoid ants, which bite, sting, and attack in swarms, so the baby mantises get a free pass to run around and hunt small prey without being bothered. As they molt and grow, shedding their exoskeleton again and again, they gradually shift from that black ant shape into the pink, white, and green floral masterpiece you see on screen. Each molt brings a little more color, a little more of that petal-like shape, but there's a dark twist waiting in their social lives. One that makes even their hunting tactics look gentle. Females are absolute giants compared to the tiny males. A full-grown female can be 2 or even 3 times the size of a male of the same species. And when mating time comes around, the female will almost always try to devour the male if she gets the chance. She'll grab him mid-mating with her powerful front legs and eat him alive to gain extra nutrients for her developing eggs. It's brutal, there's no way around that, but it's also a brutally effective strategy. The male gets to pass on his genes, and the female gets the fuel she needs to lay hundreds of healthy eggs, ensuring the next generation of orchid mantises survives. You might be wondering how evolution could possibly produce a creature with so many layers of deception, from ant mimicry as babies to flower mimicry as adults, to wing spots that scare off predators, to sexual cannibalism that feeds the next clutch of eggs. It feels like too many tricks for one small insect to pull off, like nature stacked the deck entirely in its favor. The answer lies in a concept that redefines what we think of as survival of the fittest. To understand how the orchid mantis got all those tricks, we need to rewind millions of years. Its ancestors were ordinary, green mantises that hunted among leaves, relying on camouflage to ambush passing prey. But at some point, a random mutation made one individual a little pinker, a little more petal-shaped around the legs. That mutant had a clear edge. It didn't just hide better, it drew more prey straight to it. Over countless generations, natural selection fine-tuned every detail. Each tiny improvement, a wider leg lobe, a brighter pink hue, a subtle sway in the breeze, meant more food, more surviving offspring, more of those traits passed down. Now, you might assume it evolved to copy one specific orchid, but that's not the case. A 2014 study out of Macquarie University tested wild pollinators in the mantis's native Southeast Asian rainforests, and the results were shocking. The orchid mantis attracted 34% more pollinators than the real flowers growing around it. It doesn't look like any single flower species in its habitat. Instead, it's a superstimulus, an exaggerated, idealized version of a flower that exploits the insect brain's hardwired preferences. Scientists call this sensory exploitation. For hundreds of millions of years, pollinators evolved to seek out specific visual cues: perfect symmetry, bright pink and white patterning, distinct UV light signatures. Those cues always meant nectar, always meant food. But the mantis hacks that ancient programming directly. So the mantis isn't just a passive imitator, it's an active manipulator, using insect psychology against its prey. And that same bright flower-like shape pulls double duty for protection because most predators avoid eating things that look like flower blooms. When a predator does get too close, those startling eye spots on its wings flash open to trigger an immediate fear response. That solves the question we posed earlier: why a bright pink mantis doesn't get eaten constantly. It's not a liability, it's a shield and a lure, all in one. Every stage of its life is built around this layered deception. It starts as an ant-mimicking nymph to avoid being picked off by small predators, grows into a flower superstimulus to hunt, and uses those wing spots to fend off anything that sees through the floral disguise. Even sexual cannibalism ties back to this evolutionary efficiency. A single male meal can boost a female's egg output by up to 40%, giving her offspring a better shot at survival. This is the deeper principle behind survival of the fittest that we referenced earlier. It's not just a string of lucky mutations. It's evolution stacking one useful trait on top of another, repurposing existing biological programming to build something far more effective than any single mimicry trick could be. The orchid mantis is living proof that evolution can create art, deadly, beautiful art, honed over millions of years to exploit every loophole in the natural world. The next time you spot a bright pink flower swaying in the breeze, take a closer look. It might not be what you think. If you're fascinated by the hidden world of insect imposters, hit that subscribe button and join us for more incredible stories from the wild.